Aim training is a big subject in the FPS community, but specifically in Counter-Strike, there are 3 key fundamentals that you need to master when you are aim training that a lot of people don't talk about. So if you are someone who is struggling with aim, or maybe you want to figure out how to improve your aim in Counter-Strike, I'm going to go over those 3 fundamentals and those 3 tips to ensure that you guys can improve at a very good rate. Now, a lot of people don't talk about these fundamentals that I'm going to explain. You may heard a few people talk about them, but they're not talked about a lot. So I'm going to make sure to cover them and explain to you what they are. So let's go ahead and get started with the first fundamental and how to train it. First fundamental that you need to master is micro flicks. Now, if you don't know what a micro flick is, I'm just going to show a little example. Let's pretend that there's a bot right here on this bullet. And if I decide to flick to him and over flick, I have to do a little micro flick or a micro adjustment to get onto his head. And these are very important in Counter-Strike because another example is, let's say there's a team trying to go mid to B. For example, it's pistol round. Let's pretend they don't have a, mid to B smoke. If I'm holding for this guy and I try to shoot him, but he's going to swing past my crosshair, I'm going to have to do a little micro flick to try to flick to him where he decides to counter strafe and try to shoot me. If you're playing in faceit level 5 or whatever, this guy's gonna sit here and just keep moving nonstop and not even try to kill you, which is totally fine. But when he does decide to counter strafe, you're gonna be trying to shoot him, and then obviously you're gonna have to do a little micro flick. Now, there is a lot of ways to train this, but let's, for example, since we're in an offline map, there's actually a very easy way to do this, and that is simply just finding targets on the wall that you want to flick to. So like, let's say for example, there's 2 tiny targets here. There's one right here on my right, one right here on my left, just some spots on the wall. And I can literally just sit here and just flick to these targets. Just, you can count, or you can just sit here and just keep flicking for as long as you want. There is a lot of different targets around the map, like a dot here and a dot here, where you can just sit here and just keep flicking and practicing, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Now, there was something that Nothing used to do a long time ago, which he showed in a video for some more noob friendly ways to train this, and it's where he would just shoot 2 targets on the wall, and then he would just flick back and forth to these targets, just kind of like this, just really getting that muscle memory, building up that muscle memory, working on those little micro flicks. So then when you are in a situation where this guy wants to swing, you already have your muscle memory down, and you don't really have to really adjust and flick your crosshair around, kind of like how Simple aims, where he's like flicking around when he aims somewhere with that shaky aim. So I think if you really want a snappy aim, that's a good way to do it. Now, there is some workshop maps that you could use, like Aimbots, or maybe the aim trainee map that I really talk about. Those aren't really micro flicks. Those are a lot wider flicks for like your arm, but this is usually just using your wrist, which is what a micro flick is. So if you are newer to the game, you can definitely, just do the drill that I showed, where you can shoot the wall or just find targets on the wall. Like for this example, I could come all the way back here and just simply just flick to these targets if I wanted to. I know this is very, dirty work, you could call it, but you're going to be very successful if you really do the dirty work. Now, the next tip is something that is rarely talked about in Counter-Strike, but before I get to that tip, if you guys want any cool skins like I have in my inventory, make sure you check out the sponsor of this video, Skins Monkey.
Skins Monkey is a CS2 skins trading site and marketplace that provides an instant way to get new skins. My favorite thing about Skins Monkey is that I can trade skins that I no longer want and trade it for a skin that is equal value. If you use code LouisCS2, you get a $5 bonus on your first trade. If you want to buy skins, you can get a 30% deposit bonus plus an extra 5% using my code. The link is down in the description.
So the next fundamental that you need to master is tracking. Now, this isn't really talked about a lot in Counter-Strike because Counter-Strike is more of a flick game, and you have recoil, of course, that you have to track with. Now, I think it's really important that if you are a experienced player, you really want to work on your recoil with tracking, where you can actually just pretty much go left to right in a straight line like this. I know mine's a little wonky because I just got done playing 10 faceit pugs, but you want to make sure that you can obviously just go in a straight line with your spray, so you can track anyone that is sliding across your screen. But if you are more of a newer player, tracking is very important because, like the example I showed you when I was right here, for a pistol round, if there's a player that wants to just keep scaling, you can just track his head very easily. Let's say you practice the micro flicks as well. If there's more than one coming out mid after you track this guy, you can just do a little micro flick to his friend that might be posted on you trying to kill him. Tracking is very, very important. Now, there's not many maps in the workshop that can help you with tracking right now. I was a big fan of the YPRAC aim maps that had a lot of different varieties of aim training. It was pretty much like aim labs in Counter-Strike, which I thought was very cool. But since we don't have those currently, I know there is the one map I talk about, the aim reflex workshop map, which I really preach that you need to really learn because it's just, bots running around in a circle and you can just sit there and aim at them. So I think that is a really good map that you should probably be playing on if you are struggling with tracking. But tracking also comes into play with maybe something like a deagle, where if you are holding a tight angle like mid doors on Dust 2 and someone wants to slide across your screen, instead of trying to time your shot, you can just easily just flick to him. If I'm holding a tight angle thinking he might walk out on me, but he decides to swing, I can literally just track to him like this with almost a micro flick, but you're also tracking the same speed as what the characters are moving. If you play that fast reflex aim workshop map, you will really be able to figure out what the speed of the player models are, and it'll make it easier for you to track. That is also kind of breaking down the fundamental of tracking, is getting used to the speed of what the player models move at, and it'll help you really adjust so you're not just guessing constantly. You're actually able to go with the speed of the player model, which is, something like this speed. No one's ever going to swing you where you have to, track like this. It's always just like a nice smooth speed, which also kind of brings up the subject of like in Valorant, people talk a lot about smooth aim, which isn't really important in Counter-Strike. But if you do want some sort of smooth aim, you definitely want to work on tracking so you can easily just track someone. So if someone, wants to wide swing me here, I can just track him and kill him, which is almost like a micro flick. But if someone also wants to, maybe try to run a goose, you can sit here and just track him and then, hit him with a nice 1D. But like I explained earlier as well, you also want to work on your spray with tracking, because if I'm a mid player and these guys decide I want to rush B, I want to be able to spray them down, because they're not just going to come out one by one unless you're in like a silver matchmaking game. So you want to make sure that you can track these guys just running across your screen. So that is something really good to practice. And I really recommend, a good thing to do is go on all the maps and kind of see where your recoil is. So if someone wants to, run across the Xbox, I want to really get used to spraying here, so I'm not just constantly guessing. When I was on teams, I would actually have set places I would put my crosshair to make sure it was a headshot angle. So when I went to a, common position that I always play, let's say for example, I like to play on top of this box, I would find a good lineup or a good point or a good reference point to put my crosshair. So maybe like below the sign a little bit, and then I could literally just spray him down like this. So finding good reference points to track your recoil, I think, is very important as well. So if you are a newer player or even an experienced player, I think that's something that you should do. But like I said earlier, that's some dirty work, and the really successful people in this game really love doing the dirty work. So I really recommend that you do that. Now, this tip is the last one, which I saved for last specifically because it is talked about a lot, and it's just counter strafing. Aim training is very important, but if you can't stop and shoot very quickly, your aim's not gonna matter. Like, I could have perfect crosshair placement on this guy right here swinging him, but if I can't counter strafe correctly and fast enough, I'm not gonna kill him. So this is very important that you really learn to counter strafe. Now, there is a cool little drill that you can do if you're just offline by yourself, and you can literally just strafe back and forth. As you can see, I missed that one. You can just strafe back and forth like this if you really want to, and this will really get used to you really having to counter strafe if you want. You can do some wide swings if you feel like maybe your wide swings are bad, or you can just get used to some spots like here where if you want to just practice strafing and just really stopping, this is very good to do as well. But counter strafing is very important, and all the aim training actually doesn't matter if you can't counter strafe. So if you are struggling with counter strafing, just do the 2 drills that I talked about just a couple seconds ago, or you can just hop in a deathmatch server or maybe aim bots and just work on counter strafing shooting bots. But if you're not a fan of shooting bots, you can always just hop in an offline server like this right here. But hopefully those tips helped you on aim training. Those are some fundamentals that people don't talk about. They more just talk about flicking and a little bit of counter strafing, but counter strafing is the topping of the cake. So make sure you guys really practice that, because if you don't have good counter strafing, good micro flicks, or good tracking, all the little aim stuff that you're doing isn't really gonna matter. But make sure you guys are doing the dirty work. But if I did forget anything in this video, make sure you guys comment that down below. Make sure you guys like the channel and subscribe for daily Counter-Strike content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.